Hello and welcome to 12 Questions, a podcast where we dissect anything and everything with the same incisive set of queries. I'm Jonny.
And I'm Paris.
And this week we will be reviewing West Side Story, the 1961 musical set in New York between two rival gangs, the Sharks and the Jets, as they fight for dominance over a same bit of turf, while a fledgling romance attempts to bloom within the depths of it. To give an analogy to the plot of this film, imagine Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but instead set in 1950s New York, and instead of the Montagues and the Capulets, you have the Sharks and the Jets. Paris, what are your thoughts on this musical?
Oh, I think this episode's going to be interesting because I have very mixed views on this musical.
Ooh, okay.
I don't love it.
As like mixed as the melting pot of the Sharks and the Jets?
Well, maybe.
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts on it?
Well, actually, I've got to confess, I only saw it for the first time this week, and I had a really good time.
Yeah, no, I still like it, but I have issues with it.
Okay.
More so than previous episodes.
Yes, okay. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a juicy episode, so let's jump right into it. With our first question, what was our favourite character?
Shall we just run through a few of the characters as usual?
I think we should. There are a lot of very colourful characters.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the Jets and the Sharks, of course.
Yes.
So the Jets are the American New Yorkers.
So they're kind of a gang of kids and hoodlums.
Yeah. Their leader is Riff.
What a guy.
Who, yeah, I really like Riff.
Yeah.
And he's I don't know what to say about him. He's quite charismatic, I suppose.
Yeah, he's definitely the leader of the Jet gang.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's very, he's kind of quick on his feet. He's fairly physical. He can handle himself in a fight.
Yeah, definitely.
He's witty and charming. There's a scene where he's trying to persuade someone and he's kind of trying all his tricks, where he's trying to persuade his friend Tony. Mm-hmm. So he'll say what he needs to get what he wants. He's quick on his feet in that way.
Absolutely. Also, forgot to mention, there will be spoilers in this episode as ever.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely. But if
you have been warned.
If, like me, you haven't seen West Side Story, I'd recommend you go see it. There is a twist in it which I didn't even expect.
Ooh.
Which we will be spoiling as it's integral to the overall analysis of the plot. So go see West Side Story and then come back and listen to our podcast.
Yes. So continuing on with the Jets characters, there is Tony, who is kind of... He's left the Jets and gone and got a job.
He's got a real job.
Respectable job kind of guy. You know, he's like, the Jets are behind me now. Mm-hmm. But towards the beginning of the film, Riff comes and persuades him, like, help us out, we want to do this thing. We want to challenge the Sharks. I need you, my right-hand man, kind of thing.
Yeah. Because Tony's a bit of a bigger guy. Bit of a useful, can handle himself in a fight as well, so it's good to have him around.
Yeah.
Let's just pause a sec about Tony. What are your thoughts on Tony?
I mean...
You've started to deflate already.
I mean, like, the issue I have with Tony, and with Maria, actually, who we'll get onto in a moment, is that when you first meet Tony, he's very, like, independent, he's getting his life together, he's got all these hopes and dreams of a career and everything.
Yes.
And by the end of it, he's just really one-dimensional and all he cares about is the romance plot, and it's like, it just irritates me because he loses all of his character.
That is true. The romance plot, which we'll get onto in a bit, does kind of hijack his character.
The romance plot is very all-consuming for Tony and Maria by the end of it.
So his first song, he's talking about something's coming.
Yeah.
He's very optimistic and hopeful, and he is confident of something coming down the line, something interesting, exciting, but it just turns out to be a movie romance.
Yeah.
It's good for him, I suppose. He's definitely, weird point, but he's the most distinctive looking member of the cast.
Yeah.
He's got a very distinctive face,
I think it's
Tony.
the jawline. He's got a very strong jawline.
It's the teeth, I think.
No, it's the teeth.
They're
right.
very, very white and very pronounced.
Yeah.
Because he looks great from some angles, and then
he looks awful from others.
Yeah, he's got an optimism to his face. He's kind of naive look about him.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So that's
as
Tony.
we were saying, Maria.
Yes. So
if we move on to the Sharks now, which is the Puerto Rican gang
Yes.
that the Jets feel are kind of encroaching on their turf.
Yes.
Maria is the sister of Bernardo, who I will come back to.
Yep.
Maria becomes Tony's love interest, so she is, as this is based off Romeo and Juliet, she is Juliet. Mm-hmm. And with her, again, she, at the beginning of this film, she's very much, she wants to explore this new country she's come to. She's got a lot of hopes and dreams.
Absolutely,
by the end of it, she's just, like, obsessed with this love plot. And
Yes.
it's like, girl!
So Maria starts kind of as your archetypical romance feminine lead in that she's...
Manic pixie dream girl.
Well, a little bit. She's described as the craziest girl on the block in the city. Yeah. And she occupies a position within her social group which leaves her wanting. So
yeah,
I'd say this is a bit of a trope in romance where the female lead isn't the boss of wherever she is. You know, there are stronger female characters, either matriarchs or friends that advise her. So she's kind of the young one out of the sharks, out of the Puerto Ricans. I suppose. And yeah, definitely very innocent.
So speaking of strong female characters around her, we also have Anita, who is... We love her. Who is the girlfriend of Bernardo, who again I will come back to.
We really should mention Bernardo first when we were talking about the show.
We should have, shouldn't we? Never
anyway,
mind.
We'll get to him. It's suspense.
Anita is a very strong character. She's very sassy.
Yes.
Like, she's very, very sassy.
Extremely.
And obviously being the girlfriend of Maria's brother, they have quite a sister-in-law-esque relationship. And I get the impression Anita's older, because she's very much, like... She's quite motherly towards Maria.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And she seems older. She's, as you said, she's really fiery. And she's never afraid to, if someone throws an insult her way, she's never afraid to throw an even bigger one right back.
Absolutely.
she's very witty and very, quite provocative in a way. She teases people and she's great fun. She's clearly having fun. Which is very
definitely.
nice. Which is something you might not be able to say about Tony and Maria being so serious. That Anita is having fun, and that's fun to watch.
Yeah. So Bernardo,
the long-awaited Bernardo,
as promised. I mean, don't get your hopes up. He's not that exciting. He is the gang leader of the Sharks, though.
Yes.
I'll give him that much. I mean, that's kind of it.
You know what? You are kind of right.
That's all he does. That's kind of it.
Well,
he also looks after Maria. Like, he takes on a kind of fatherly role, which is interesting because it is referenced that both of her parents are present. They're never on screen, but they are like asleep in the room next door.
Oh yes, you hear them. Yes,
but you never see them. You just see sort of Bernardo and Anita kind of taking on a parental role,
which is
a very
interesting.
Good point.
Yes. Well, Bernardo is more serious in that. He has a responsibility. He's the leader of this gang.
Yeah.
Which is, by extension, is the leader of a whole section of the cast. He takes it very seriously. He dresses up smart all the time, and he's going to meetings and councils to decide the fate of his gang. Is there any moments where he's particularly playful? I guess he dances in a very
I don't know. I think his dancing's still got a bit of seriousness to it.
Okay.
It's quite it's very sharp technique. He's very like, this is serious dancing.
Yes, that's fair. Okay, so that's Bernardo from the Sharks. There's also other Shark members. There's Chino.
Oh, yeah. Chino is... I mean, I think it's something of an arranged marriage between Maria and Chino.
Yeah, clearly...
I'm not quite sure what that dynamic is.
Clearly everyone is thinking at the start of the film that Chino and Maria are going to get together.
Yeah.
And...
she doesn't want to.
No. And Chino doesn't really do much throughout the film, but I think that's an appropriate part of his character. He's sort of off on the sidelines.
He's a bit of a wet blanket.
He definitely is a bit
Until
of a wet
the end
blanket.
when he, spoilers, kills Tony.
Whoa, right into there. Okay, yeah. And then we've got a couple of other characters. So we've set up the Sharks and the Jets, two rival gangs. But they're not the only people that live in this particular bit of New York. We also have the police.
Ah, of course.
Who, if there is a truly antagonistic force in the film, you could argue it's the police, because if there's one thing that unites the Sharks and the Jets, it's getting away from the police.
Yeah, every time the police appear, they pretend they all like each other to avoid that kind of conflict. So they're definitely the unifying force.
Exactly, and the police are the main adults in the film. So most of the characters are very young teenagers and hoodlums, and then the adults who represent authority include Officer Krupke and Detective Schrank.
Oh, and the other adult is the owner of the shop that Tony works at.
Yes.
But he is kind of more on their side.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
What do you think of Detective Schrank? It's quite a nasty name, isn't it?
It is a horror. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well.
No,
it's not a very nice name.
Krupke.
Krupke.
Krupke and Schrank.
Yeah, they're definitely giving you a message with the name choices.
That sounds like a firm of grave robbers in 18th century England. You know, Krupke and Schrank.
Yeah.
Or like a chocolate factory which opposes Willy Wonka's. You know, you've got Willy Wonka's and then you've got Krupke and Schrank. We make sweets.
Yeah, definitely hard-boiled sweets.
Hard-boiled, yes, because he is a very hard-boiled detective. He's sick of this life and what it's done to him.
Yeah.
Which has made him horribly institutionally racist.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a theme here.
So Detective Schrank offers to aid the Jets in their gang violence, if only to drive the Puerto Ricans out of this part of Manhattan. So he's, very nasty character. Krupke is less overtly nasty. He's just a bit of an annoyance to the gang and a bit of a fool. So with that spectrum of characters, are there any you particularly like or particularly don't like?
Oh, a couple we forgot to mention.
Okay.
Would be the two, I can't remember their names, the two women that are kind of the gangsters moles of the Jets.
Oh, yeah.
And also Anybody's, who is the woman that kind of she wants to be part of the gang, so she's very tomboyish, but they won't let her in to the Jets because she's a girl. And I have issues with her because I really want to love her because she's being quite, subversive of societal norms and everything, but she's just really annoying.
Yes, even when she's being useful. She's just annoying. Not a fun stage presence.
I want to love her, but I can't.
Okay. Is there anyone that you feel you can love? Any great characters here?
I mean, I've got to go with Anita.
Yes, okay.
I think Anita is great. I also love Riff, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's just great fun to watch. Like, his dancing is wonderful. His stage presence and his singing, he's just a really fun character. So, Anita and Riff, I think Anita wins it for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. She's just really
so
really fun to watch. Yes.
Great, I love her.
So I think, obviously I love Anita, but I'm actually going to pull two surprise castings out of the hat, one of which is Baby John. Baby John is one of the Jets. He's one of the gang that Riff is in charge of. And he's initially introduced as definitely the young one of the group. He's less experienced. He's more frightened. He doesn't like violence as much as the rest of them. And whenever something serious goes down, he's always the worried-looking one and the one that the police try to get to make confess, but because obviously he's the easy target. The gang seems quite protective over him, even though they're a bit annoyed. He's a bit of a wuss. But the reason I really like him is that he goes through an arc throughout the film, I think.
Yeah.
He starts as very afraid of what's going on, and certain tragic events in the film kind of force him to grow up a bit.
Okay, yeah.
He kind of, I'd say by the end of the film, he's kind of found his inner cool a bit more. He's
nice song reference.
Well, exactly. I think that's a transformative moment for Baby John, and he's been forced to confront the kind of the reality of the life he's in. So I'd say in this film, Baby John becomes John. So I like that. And then finally, a one-off bit character who, just in terms of average per enjoyment per minute, is definitely my favourite character. It's the Jets and the Sharks both go to a dance together, an organised dance in the gym of a school.
In the neutral territory.
And it's organised by this adult who's not named, as far as I can tell. He's just a man who's trying to get these two groups of kids to get along. And he's just really funny. They've intentionally made him that kind of lame adult who's trying to get down with the kids.
The substitute teacher who no one listens to.
Yes,
kind
absolutely,
of
yes. And he's trying to get the kids to dance in a circle so that they can all mix together. But what I love about him is he's unfailingly enthusiastic about it. He's really trying to get people...
He just really cares.
Yeah, exactly. And he's so naive as to what's going on. He has no idea. Well, it seems like he's clueless about the emerging violent gang warfare that's going on. So he's unnamed, and he's just got a funny face as well.
Johnny, that's a bit rude.
No, there's some great expressive faces in this, and he certainly has one. In fact, he has such a funny, expressive face that it turns out it's the same actor who played Gomez Addams, the father in the original Addams Family TV show.
Really?
Yeah, in a little bit part. So, so he does a really nice turn in this. According to IMDb, which obviously I got this from, this was his breakout role.
Oh.
So not only is it my favourite character because he's fun to watch, it's my favourite character because it did so much for the person who played him. So in terms of film,
that's actually really lovely.
it's a really nice character. So I'd say unnamed dance chaperone for my favourite character.
Okay.
So we've reviewed a lot of the colourful characters in this musical, but they would be nothing without our next question, which is to say, what is our favourite colour in West Side Story? Paris.
Right.
I'm just looking. It looks like you've got a few notes on.
I just want to run through some thoughts on colours before I come to a conclusion.
Hit us with it.
So in the Rumble, which is kind of the big gang fight, sort of towards the end of the film between the Jets and the Sharks, which is what we build to throughout a lot of the film, Bernardo is wearing black and red, which is kind of unprecedented for him because he wears a lot of dark purples before that. And Riff is wearing blue and white, which is also kind of unprecedented because before that he is wearing yellow and sort of neutral colours like beiges. So obviously black and white are opposing colours. And red and blue sort of oppose each other, I'd say.
Yeah, okay. Going like hot and cold.
Yeah, hot and cold. That works. So this is obviously very, like, two opposing forces, two opposing gangs. And also black is a very ominous colour, perhaps the colour of death.
Ooh.
White is a very innocent colour.
Yes.
And you know what happens in this scene, of course? Bernardo kills Riff.
Yes.
So I thought it was very interesting how they did the colours on that to kind of put across what was happening in the scene. And also, sort of building on that, what you will also notice with Riff is that he's wearing the blue jacket, but after that, in the song Cool,
Yes.
the guy, I don't know his name, but the guy who kind of takes over as gang leader is wearing a very similar blue jacket.
I hope it's very similar. I hope he didn't just steal his buddy's jacket.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, you know, it's not said that he doesn't do that.
Well, they run away without taking the jacket.
Oh.
So I'm going to assume that it was a different jacket.
I mean, that's a bit of a baller move if you're trying to take over a gang, is to take the jacket off the corpse of the former gang leader and say,
my life.
I am the gang leader now. Maybe the jacket is what gave them their power, because it's the colour.
Perhaps. I'd also like to point out that yellow is quite an optimistic colour in
Yeah,
this.
that's true.
Because I think Maria wears some yellow in I Feel Pretty,
That's
which is
right,
obviously
yes.
a
Yellow
very
and red.
chirpy, happy song. And Riff and Tony both go to the dance wearing
Yes.
yellow.
Yeah,
and
they had the same jacket as well. There's a lot of
there's
jacket
lots of matching
similarities.
jackets here.
Yeah, loads.
Such a coordinated wardrobe between these jets, honestly.
Yes.
But obviously Tony's just sung about something's coming, so he's very optimistic about this dance. Like, that's where he
Yes.
thinks his life is going to change. And I think Riff's just generally quite an optimistic, chirpy kind of guy.
Yeah, I wonder if we could speak to... So Riff has his iconic optimistic yellow jacket, and it's got a blue lining. And then, as you said, when he goes in for the rumble, he switches it out for a blue jacket with a kind of some touches of yellow.
Oh,
so
that's
he
interesting.
inverts.
Yeah.
Is that perhaps, as you were saying, an indication of the loss of innocence that happens at this battle? Or maybe it's a day and night thing, because you first see him in that jacket in the song, you know, where he's saying the Jets are going to have their way tonight. That's when you first see him in that jacket.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a
Maybe,
night and day.
maybe. Or maybe it's just a kind of subversion of colours to represent that the plot has kind of flipped and it's reaching a new stage in the plot.
Yes. Actually, is that the first time you see him after the intermission? Maybe it's like part 1 Riff and part 2 Riff.
Yeah, because he dies in the Rumble, and the first time you see him is in the Tonight Quintet, which, as you say, is when he gets the blue jacket. So yeah, maybe it is just Act 1 and Act 2 Riff.
Yeah, all right. So we've talked about blues and yellows. We've kind of skirted around red, but the film does not skirt around red.
Oh, it absolutely doesn't.
There is a lot of red
There is
going
a
on.
lot of red. I mean, the iconic film poster is all in red. There's a lot of red.
Yeah.
Which I actually am going to say is in typical colour fashion is representative of danger.
Oh, you think? Danger?
I think it does.
Okay.
But I also think it might represent love. But danger and love do go hand in hand in this.
Perhaps, I think. I don't know.
Well,
Okay.
during Something's
Hit me up.
Coming,
Yes.
there is a lot of red behind,
Yep.
what's his name, Tony.
Yep. He's even carrying Coca-Cola bottles.
Yeah, there is a lot of red behind him.
Yep.
A lot of red. And obviously this is a song where he's saying something's coming and he thinks it's going to be this great thing, but actually it turns out to cause him to die. So, you know, there's definitely danger there. The sharks are often associated with red.
Yeah.
But if, as we begin the show the film from the Jets' perspective,
Yes.
I think you're kind of supposed to be on the Jets' side, by
Yeah,
which
right.
logic the Sharks are the danger that come into this.
Yes. They're certainly dangerous.
Yeah, and then there's the whole thing with Maria really wants to dye her dress red,
That's true.
which, you know, she is a danger to Tony.
But she doesn't really want to be a danger.
She doesn't
to
want to
Tony.
be, but also maybe the symbol of love.
Okay.
Maria is the love interest. She's wearing red.
Yeah.
Danger and love are combined.
Okay. Right. All right. So the use of the color red is illustrative of how maybe it's passion. Maybe that's what links
Maybe passion.
love
yeah.
and danger.
Yeah.
But the use of red is to illustrate the link between the love of those two characters and the danger that it brings.
Yeah.
Okay. I see it. I see it. I'm not sure I buy it.
Okay.
But I see it.
Okay.
I think the tricky thing with this film is whilst there are some highlights of colour, I think because it's such a colourful film, it's difficult to draw a consistent theme with a colour throughout the film.
Yeah.
Because they're using so many primary colours in so many places. Mm-hmm. Just because there's so much red going on throughout the film. It's a bit like, for example, in the film Fight Club, there's this ongoing theme that there's always a Starbucks product in the background of every scene.
Yeah.
In this film, you could play a similar game that there's always something prominently red displayed in full view. Not just a red thing, but there's a red colour woven throughout the
I
film.
think the big ending
Yes.
is obviously one where they're torn apart,
Yes.
so their love does become danger very
Yeah.
much. I think the fact red is prominent throughout is just this ever-present reminder of the danger of their love.
Okay, all right.
Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after the ending where Tony dies, I don't think there's any red after that. I mean, there's only a few minutes left of the film, but I don't think it's predominantly red.
It's dark.
Yeah, it's dark.
Police
and,
officer, yeah.
So I think the red is just like a warning sign throughout.
Okay. So when Maria is singing I Feel Pretty and she's wearing what you might describe as an optimistic yellow and a dangerous red, you're saying that perhaps the set designer has subverted the meaning of the song in that you think it's this optimistic song about, you know, greater things to come and feeling pretty, but actually it's a warning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. No, that's fair enough, Paris. Nicely done. But is that your favourite colour?
I don't know, because there's also I just really like Anita's kind of purple.
Yeah.
She wears a lot of really nice shades of sort of lilac-y
I just want to say, especially at the dance, Anita and Bernardo are completely on point. Like
They're so well
they're
dressed.
coordinated
Yeah.
as well. Like he's wearing like a purple and black,
Yeah.
and she's wearing like a kind of lilac-y
Lilac and
purple.
black, yeah.
And that's pretty goals, you might say.
Yeah.
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 So is that your favourite
I think
colour?
purple,
I got to
yeah.
agree. Like Anita's purple dress it's just really good. It's like I said last week with Jack Skellington's red Father Christmas outfit. Sometimes you just got to appreciate a really good colour.
Yeah.
And that dress, great.
So, should we move on to our third question?
Yes.
Okay, our third question is, what was your favourite meeting?
Well, I'd say a meeting is the very first thing that happens in the film. And
Okay.
it's something that recurs throughout the film. And it's one of the most iconic bits of West Side Story, which is the snapping.
Oh, yeah.
So characters will snap their fingers in rhythm, and it's often associated with the gangs.
Yeah.
So the Jets will walk along, all snapping in time. And it seems like it's a kind of subconscious way of characters synchronizing with each other.
Okay.
So the Jets will snap at the same time to the same beat because they're one, they're united.
Yeah.
And once their leader Riff dies and they need to reunite, their new leader pulls them together by snapping as well. He starts snapping and everyone else almost reluctantly, it seems, starts snapping with him on the song Cool. So it's kind of bringing people together. But that's not just related to the gang. When Tony and Maria meet, what some might describe as the most important meeting in the film, they have this little dance, which is the music is very airy and light behind them. But one of the things that happens in the choreography is they both snap on the same beat. There's kind of a da-da. And which they both do, and that's them coming into synchronization, their hearts beating as one, you might say. It's a rhythmic, well, yes, yeah, absolutely, but it's a rhythmic gesture. So I'd have to say that the snap is, whilst not a singular meeting, quite a significant part of the film.
Yeah. I'm mostly inclined to agree with you there, really.
Okay.
The only other thing I had written down on meetings was I just generally really like the prologue, how you have all the meetings between the Jets and the Sharks. And
Yes, that's really fun.
The choreography is really fun, and it just it introduces you to the rivalry of these gangs.
Yeah.
And I just really like that whole section.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to watch the whole of West Side Story, just watch the prologue. It's really cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, you might consider it as a form of kind of counterpoint. It's the gangs are kind of running around, and you'll follow a couple of Jets, and they'll find a single shark, and they'll start chasing them down. You round a corner, there's a load of sharks.
Yeah.
Start chasing the Jets down, vice versa. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
It's really it's a lot of fun as well. Very physical. Another meeting which I had identified actually, quite famously mentioned in the music, written of course by Leonard Bernstein, is the use of a tritone, or an augmented fourth, which I'm reliably informed, and probably wrong, that's when you have two notes which are three tones apart, a tritone. So you may recognise it in the musical as the interval when Tony sings Maria. So the Maria. That's the augmented fourth, which is very interesting because before this was heavily associated with the devil.
Pardon?
Yeah, no, I am going to explain. The tritone in Western music, in Western classical music, when you play those, especially when you play those two notes together at the same time, it sounds very nasty and dissonant.
Yeah.
So that's why you actually, I mean, you'll hear it in heavy metal as well. You'll hear those two notes played together, or you'll hear it when someone is trying to represent hell or the devil or evil in classical music. But Bernstein did something a bit very, very edgy and used it to represent love. So he puts it in Maria, and he puts it in Something's Coming, that interval, those two notes. And I think that's very interesting because it's two notes where if you play them one after the other, it sort of makes sense. It's kind of what gives Maria it's an interesting melody, and it's what makes it such an earworm. But it doesn't sound horrible when you go da da. But if you play those two notes together, it sounds awful.
Okay.
So that could be a representation of how when you combine Tony from the Jets and Maria from the Sharks, actually, it turns out a bit awful. It's dissonance as you encounter throughout the entire film between the Sharks and Jets, or if not dissonance, certainly a musical discomfort.
Okay, that's very interesting.
So maybe that could be considered a musical meeting throughout the film, which is of note.
Yeah. Okay. If we go on to our fourth question,
I'd love to.
That would be, how would your nan react to this?
Well, surely everyone's nan would recognise that this film is an absolute classic.
Of course.
Yes. I mean, it's part of that, I'd argue, a kind of film where you don't really see much of today, in that it's a Hollywood musical, which we still see, but there's something about the physicality of it, the incredible proficiency of the dancers, and the way it's shot. Kind of a lot of it's done in camera. There's not so many cuts.
Yeah, I think movie musicals today, there's a lot of cheating. Like they can do dances in little bits.
Yes,
and it's also very highly budgeted. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of effects and things. Whereas this is very simplistic. It's just, it's a bunch of guys dancing around a basketball court. And it's very... Yeah, it's a kind of golden era film where people didn't rely on tricks, I suppose. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you mentioned highly budgeted, but I think the reason people don't shoot like this anymore is it is actually quite expensive.
Okay.
Because there's no cheating. You've just got to keep practicing until you can do it right.
Yeah.
You put the camera down, you have the cast doing it.
I meant more in terms of things in the background.
Yes, of course. And it's very interesting to bring out the background, because this might be a reason that one's nan might like it. The film looks like a stage musical.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing to believe that's deliberate and not a part of the set design. But the backdrops look like backdrops.
Yeah.
And when people fight, it looks like they're dancing. There's no doubt that in 1961 they could do a realistic punch-up between two people.
Yeah.
But it's clearly dance fighting. People are dodging blows and there's no serious contact between the two. So, yeah, I think that might be... Well, what would a nan think of that? I think they might appreciate that. It's an innocence.
I think they'd appreciate it. Yeah. Because it hasn't got that kind of goriness.
No, it doesn't.
You perhaps get with a lot of films these days. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that was a bit violent, wasn't it?
Exactly. I mean, even when a character, Riff, gets stabbed,
You don't really see it, do you?
the most you see is the knife is suddenly red, but it looks like it's been painted red. You know, it's
Yeah.
And again, this film came out just after Psycho. Like, they could do realistic blood on screen,
Oh, absolutely.
but they didn't here. So I think that makes it suitable for a Nan.
Yeah.
So
I think
we're
this
saying
is Nan approved.
Nan approved. Okay, yeah, your Nan would react well to this.
So, question 5.
Yes.
If this were a food, what would it be?
I was thinking about this a lot. So obviously it's set in Manhattan,
Okay.
which is a bit of a melting pot, and it's these two cultures coming together and but not quite mixing.
Yeah.
So you couldn't say it was some kind of metropolitan fusion or anything like that, because they're not really mixing at all.
Yeah.
They're kind of clashing against one another.
Okay. So something with a lot of conflicting flavours, perhaps.
Well, perhaps, yeah. And then I was thinking about getting down to the root of it, and it kind of hit me. There's a lot of red in this film.
Okay. As established.
As I mentioned. And it's a very fiery, passionate film. So all the cast have incredible energy. They'll break out into song and dance at any point.
Yeah.
I was actually, as a side note, baffled by the dance scene after America, the song America, because none of the cast looks sweaty. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, there are no sweat patches on the clothes, despite the fact that they've just done this incredible energetic dance.
Absolutely.
So the cast have this incredible energy. So I thought, what's red and full of vigour and spicy? And I thought, of course, it's a chili pepper. This film is like a firecracker. It's a chili pepper. It's so much bubbling waiting to go off. It's spicy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the chili pepper is more Mexico than Puerto Rico, but still, I think if I had to encapsulate this, I'd say chili pepper.
Yeah, and I think building on that as well, you've got to be wary of a spicy chili pepper.
Oh, yes, you do.
You know, it could blow your head off.
You got to be prepared for that.
So, you know, it's coming back to this theme of danger, I suppose.
Yes.
And definitely the passion and the fire. Fiery film.
Yeah, this film is
would be a chili pepper.
It's a red hot chili pepper.
But not the band.
Not the band, no. Very nice.
Okay, so question 6, which I think we've got quite a bit to get through on this one,
Ooh,
is...
yes.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
The question in which we try and ascertain baffling decisions made by creators in the creation of their work.
Yeah.
So this is where I imagine your issues are going to start to come out in this film.
They're going to start to come out.
Okay.
They're not going to stop coming out at the end of this question.
No. Well, Paris, have the floor. Talk us through the issues you have.
The first one I want to go with is a very simple one, and
Yes.
it's a bit nitpicky of me.
No.
When Tony and Maria first meet, and then again when they're singing Tonight, they do a thing where
Yes.
they blur out all the surrounding bits of the camera.
Yeah, like they've rubbed Vaseline on the lens,
Yeah, like
yeah.
someone's just got Vaseline and just rubbed it on the lens, and it looks stupid.
Doesn't really naff, yeah.
I know it's trying to show that, like, oh, they see no one but each other.
Yes.
But that looks stupid in Dance at the Gym. They could have just done it with some nice lighting.
Yeah, that's true.
And then in Tonight, there's no one else around them, so it's completely unnecessary, and it just looks really silly.
That's true. Yeah, I think you hit on an excellent point there. Whilst we know what they're trying to do, and maybe this was, something that the director or the director of photography tried and, thought it might be interesting, you don't need it.
Yeah, it's just like...
If you took that effect away...
We know they're falling in love with each other without the whole, Vaseline on the lens.
Exactly. At the Dance at the Gym, when they start moving towards each other, your eye is naturally drawn to both of them.
Exactly.
Because of the way they're lit. You don't need this smudging.
It's really annoying.
Okay, so we don't really know why they'd do that. Keep on going, Paris.
Okay. When Tony kills Bernardo,
Yes.
the first thing he does is yell, Maria! Dude, you just killed somebody.
Yeah, and
this is your priority?
It's someone else, Maria's not here.
Like, what's going on, man?
It would be
you just killed her brother, and then you just go, Maria!
It'd be like if I stubbed my toe and went, Paris!
Exactly, it's so stupid.
Not relevant.
Yeah, she's not relevant, man.
Yeah.
And then flipping that.
Here we go, going down the list.
Yeah, I'm going for this.
Yes.
Flipping that, Maria just gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
Because Chino comes to her and
Yes.
is all like, oh, Bernardo, and then he can't get the words out. He's like, something about Bernardo. So at this point, if I was Maria, I'd be like, oh my goodness, what's happened to Bernardo?
Yeah,
Is
my
he
brother,
okay?
Bernardo.
My brother since birth. But does she say, is Bernardo okay? What's going on, Chino?
No.
Tell me.
Yeah.
She goes, is Tony all right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, you've literally known him less than 24 hours and this is your priority?
Yeah, exactly.
What's that about?
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Why would she do that?
Another thing she does in that same vein is Anita obviously finds out Bernardo, her boyfriend, or whatever he is dead.
Yes.
So she goes to Maria.
Yeah.
And she knocks on the door and she's like, Maria, please come out, I need you. And you think, like, you know, these two are kind of sister-in-law-ish.
Yeah.
They're going to support each other
This is
because
Anita's time of need,
someone they
yeah.
really love has just died.
Yes.
Does Maria come rushing to Anita? No. She's too busy giving the murderer of Bernardo a snog.
Oh.
And I'm so mad about this.
Yeah, there's massive issues going on there.
And she's just so easily forgiving of Tony, who has just killed her brother. And she's just so cool with it. And I'm like, what is going on?
So, Paris, maybe those could be summarised into the general romance between Maria and Tony.
Yeah, but it's just annoying.
Yeah, but like all those, interestingly, all those points that you've brought up all relate to Maria and Tony's romance.
I think that's where my issues lie there.
Yeah, exactly, and I think I'd agree.
Because as well, I've also written down the really cringy line where Tony's like, "We've got magic." It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, that's like is that in somewhere?
They have no. Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's him justifying them staying together despite the fact he's killed her brother.
Yeah. He's like, "We've got magic," and then she's like, "Oh, you do have magic," and it's like, "This ain't Harry Potter, love."
Well, it's such a skeezy line as well.
Oh, it just makes me cringe.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think why I hate this romance plot so much is not only that it's really just heavily done and they're obsessed with each other and it's a bit unrealistic, really.
Yes.
It's also because this is based off Romeo and Juliet, in which I think Shakespeare's aim really was to point out how ridiculous the 2-day romance and everyone dies is.
Yeah.
Whereas West Side Story has taken it and kind of made it into this really cutesy thing, and it annoys me.
Yeah, they've kind of taken Romeo and Juliet at face value and thought, oh, this is a really romantic story and you should idolise this young love. Whereas in the Shakespeare, it's implied that, as you said, it's foolish.
Yeah.
But in this, the characters are conventionally portrayed as in the right. So, for example, when Anita and Maria are discussing the whole affair in the song A Boy Like That, Anita is very justifiably saying, a boy like that killed your brother.
Yeah.
Forget that boy and find another. Very wise advice. And
then Maria's basically just like, but I'm in love and you've been in love, so you should understand where I'm coming from with this. You should know better.
And musically,
like, Maria, hun, come on.
Exactly. Maria's voice cuts through and overpowers Anita's with her piercing soprano, which
piercing soprano.
Bit too piercing, Maria. Anyway, which in a musical context you'd think would mean that's her light and her truth outshining any doubts towards their romance, and that the love conquers all in this scenario. But it's just absolutely not the point. She is in the wrong. She's with the murderer of her brother.
They're going to run away together.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah, the fact that the romance is implied as a good thing and the only righteous thing in the film, I think.
Yeah, it's just really strange that she is angry at Tony for literally killing her brother for all of 5 seconds.
If that.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
She needs a longer time to process and forgive this, if ever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question 7. What is its historical significance?
Okay. Paris is the historian of us. Do you want to take the lead in this one?
Well, I've been looking into kind of a historical narrative of musical theatre over the ages. So I actually found out, interestingly, that Oklahoma, which came out in 1943, was considered the first fully integrated musical play where it uses every song in it to develop the plot and the characters.
Yes.
So I found that really interesting because I always thought that's how musicals work to me.
Yeah.
I could never imagine a musical where a song is just kind of on its own and doesn't have any relevance to the plot, which got me thinking about how people might not see West Side Story as anything particularly innovative now, but the fact that a fully integrated musical play was innovative at one point really does make you think in that sense. But as I was saying, 1950s, the music of Broadway was kind of the pop music of that time. So you have things like The King and I, My Fair Lady, Gypsy, Singing in the Rain, and they were all very much about, or mostly all about, like, prominent female stars So you also had Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which had Marilyn Monroe in it, obviously. My Fair Lady and King and I have very prominent female roles. Then the 1960s sees a shift in popular music away from Broadway, and Broadway took a bit of a backseat. The interesting thing about West Side Story, really, is that it was a very gritty plot at the time.
Oh, yeah?
So a lot of the musicals in the 50s, like the ones I've just mentioned, all have, very happy endings, are very chirpy in their music. Whereas West Side Story was this very tragic, harrowing tale.
Yeah.
And it was it was just very unusual at the time. So just like in 1943, having a fully integrated musical play was unusual, having even a sad musical was unusual in the 60s, which, as we know, is not the case anymore, because the longest running West End play at the moment is, of course, Les Mis, closely followed by The Phantom of the Opera. Yeah. So we're not averse anymore to a tragic musical.
I mean, Les Mis literally has the word miserable in its title.
Absolutely. So yeah, the West Side Story can kind of be considered the end of what's known as the golden age of musicals, which is where Singing in the Rain and Oklahoma and My Fair Lady all come into the kind of narrative.
All right.
Another thing I found interesting when I was looking at West Side Story, moving away from musical theatre now, was that it kind of shows you the censorship standards of the time.
Oh, yeah?
Because...
What didn't we see?
Well, Tony and Riff have a little dialogue thing where Riff says womb to tomb and Tony responds with birth to earth, but in the original stage play he actually says sperm to worm. But censorship standards of films meant they couldn't say sperm to worm, it wasn't deemed appropriate. There's also another line that's changed from the stage play to the film, is where one of the sharks says you came with your mouth open. It was meant to be you came with your pants open, which I think is a rubbish line to be honest.
Mouth open is a lot better.
Mouth sounds better. Another thing is G Officer Krupke, as a song, was actually banned by the BBC for its reference to drugs and sexual ambiguity.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait, so because there's a line about cross-dressing in the song, it wasn't...
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, it's so interesting.
That is weird.
Yeah, so...
And that's a very playful song. It doesn't really have any overtones to it.
It's just really interesting that things like pants, sperm, and cross-dressing were such shocking things to say at this time.
Yeah.
It's, the film is certainly a look into the past. Obviously being from 1961, but it's definitely a look into the film industry that was.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of musicals kind of displace their time setting, right? So there aren't actually that many it always seems like musicals are set somewhere else, whereas West Side Story is set fairly contemporary to when it was released.
Yeah.
Set in the 50s, released in the early 60s, but...
Well, the stage play was released in 57 or 58, it makes sense for the 50s.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting looking back at it, because it not only... Well, it reflects the time that it's in that way, and it's funny to see that those sort of things omitted.
Definitely. Oh, another interesting thing I found out was...
You're full of interesting things today, Paris.
Thank you. As ever, of course. When Bernstein was working on this, his original idea was that it would be not a New Yorker and a Puerto Rican, but a Jew and a Catholic. And it was going to be called East Side Story. But then there was a massive influx in Puerto Rican immigration in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
So they decided instead to change that and make it West Side Story.
So it's a reaction kind of very much in time as to what was happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so this, again, is another real reflection of the time in the piece. An interesting note on that is that, Puerto Rican culture is described in depth in the song America, which is a really fun tune and a great example of Anita being teasing Bernardo. Sondheim, who wrote the lyrics, Stephen Sondheim, had never met a Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
So he had to guess as to... So it was almost revealing as to American perceptions of Puerto Rican culture in the 50s.
I actually read that the original lyrics were very belittling of Puerto Ricans and of Puerto Rico in general.
Oh, right.
And they changed the lyrics for the film, but I'm not sure whether it was Sondheim that changed the lyrics or whether someone else did it. It's also interesting that, as I've said, it was a very gritty musical, which was unusual at the time. Because we're talking late 50s that the original musical came out, it's kind of a post-war time.
Yes.
So things like Guys and Dolls and My Fair Lady were very much about, happy times.
Opulence.
You know, like...
The Roaring Twenties.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of, you know, chirpy musicals to make people feel a bit better about their life after the war.
Yes, and the Depression.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was sugarcoating kind of thing. Whereas West Side Story was very much turning the social mirror on New York and revealing this depraved society. And interestingly, actually, I believe the director had to bribe some rival gangs to stay off set so they could film on it. So it is very much about, you know, there were gangs at this time. It is kind of something of a historical source in itself.
Yeah, and it's very critical of elements of society, I guess, being shot from a youth perspective, but the police are institutionally racist, and as the song Officer Krupke talks about, you know, how society essentially fails the young.
Society's played as a terrible trick.
Well, exactly, yeah. So it's very much played for laughs in that song, but it does speak to a broader truth that a young hoodlum might get bounced around between a judge, a psychiatrist, a social worker, all around the system, and it doesn't do them any good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, it does turn the lens inward.
Definitely.
On society.
Definitely. So, question 8, if you could give this to anyone within time, Jonny, who would it be?
Well, this is an interesting one, Paris, because if we were to give it to someone back in time, we'd hope it would serve a purpose, that they gain a lesson from it. But unfortunately, the message of this film seems to be that when two cultures mix, it can end up tragic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, which is very sad. You'd hope a film about people from two different backgrounds or cultures or gangs coming together would have an optimistic ending where they set aside their differences. But narratively in this film, it just ends to tragedy and death. So maybe looking back further in the past, whereas obviously in our modern society, people mixing is great and constructive. People in the past, I guess, may have fallen afoul of that due to the standards of their time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at it. We've got a young couple in love trying to run away from their...
Yeah, and then... Ooh.
Well, I was just thinking about Edward VIII.
Okay.
So he has to run away and abdicate, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, because of his romantic entailments.
Yeah.
So you might you might imagine a royal advisor doing a sort of male version of A Boy Like That to Edward, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
A girl like that, she can't be queen, or something like that. So maybe something like that.
Yeah. No, that works. Another thing I would go with is, obviously I've touched on this already, and why would you do that?
Yeah.
The kind of obsessive commitment to something.
Oh, yeah?
And the dangers of that. So the example that's coming to my mind is Henry VIII.
Oh, Edward to Henry VIII.
Well, yeah. Who is obviously very obsessive about having a son. But he has a daughter, and then he's so annoyed that Catherine of Aragon won't give him a son that he literally establishes an entire church in order to divorce her.
Yes.
And then the next wife, Anne Boleyn, also doesn't give him a son. She gets her head chopped off.
Yep.
And he finally gets a son who is a bit weak and dies after 6 years on the throne anyway. So it's not like it really worked out for Henry.
Yeah.
So maybe this would show him that, you know, this unwavering commitment to something that completely blinkers you is not good.
Oh, yes, just, well, as you might say, like the Vaseline on the screen of Maria and Tony's romance.
Absolutely.
That blurring of everything else actually leads to your own ruination.
Yeah.
Ah, that's a very good point. And you can bring up with that Henry VIII split with the Catholic Church, right?
Yeah.
So in West Side Story, there's this rivalry between an American and Puerto Rican gang, which historically... Puerto Rican Hispanic culture leans towards Catholicism, right? Whereas the New York Jets, you might say, lean towards a Protestant, could suggest a Protestant air. So you could draw a comparison there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Henry VIII, don't let these religious divides and obsessions ruin you.
Yeah.
Is what we'd say
Be
with
warned,
West Side
Henry.
Story.
Yeah.
Ah, very nice. So moving on from our historical look into the film, we must therefore look into the future and ask ourselves, well, when will this film be forgotten?
Yeah, very good question. Well, it's worth noting that, you know, unlike our other episodes, this is from the 60s.
Yes.
I mean, it's already lasted a long time. It's on you know those BuzzFeed lists that are like however many films to see before you die kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, like West Side Story's always on those. It's always listed as this really iconic film. So already West Side Story's not been forgotten. Like it's already lasted, 50 odd years.
Yeah.
Which is definitely interesting.
Still around. I mean, I only got around to seeing it this week though, so is it really part of our culture?
Well, I don't know, because then when you look at other musicals from the 60s, you have things like The Music Man and The Pajama Game and all, like a lot. I was looking through a list and it was a lot that I'd vaguely heard of, but I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about them. Whereas West Side Story, people still know West Side Story.
Yeah.
And, I mean, significantly, it's based off a Shakespeare play. So if we want to talk about people that aren't being forgotten, Shakespeare's lasted the test of time quite well.
He's done well. I think, but with West Side Story, though, perhaps it'd be good to look at the things that... When people think of West Side Story, what do they think of? Because those are things that have really stuck in our public consciousness.
Well, I think people think of people snapping menacingly down an alleyway. I think that's definitely a thing.
In synchronisation.
Yeah, I also think the song America
is
very well remembered because it's got a very catchy melody to it.
Yeah, that's really sticks well. What about the song I Feel Pretty?
Yeah, I mean, because weren't you saying you didn't realise this song was from this film?
I'd heard that.
It's quite an iconic song, but it's sort of detached from the rest of the film.
Yeah, so obviously that's endured in its own way, not tied to the rest of the film.
I suppose I Feel Pretty has the charm of the fact there aren't many songs like it, because obviously the love songs in West Side Story, quite generic.
Yep.
Everyone's written a love song at some point.
Yes.
But no one's really written a song about feeling pretty. It's quite unique.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure someone else has, but they're not, they're kind of few and far between.
Yeah, as we were saying about Nightmare Before Christmas being linked to Halloween, if you can link yourself strongly with an enduring concept, then you're kind of golden. So if you're the go-to song about feeling pretty, then people are always going to feel pretty.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
the part of it that
so everyone putting some nice makeup on is just thinking about this song.
So that's remembered. And just like how, if you're in a musical gang, then you're not going to think of any other action than snapping.
That's true.
We have a big musical gang problem in Sheffield, so that's...
Yeah, they're just snapping around the street corners all the time.
Well, you can't get to sleep.
Nowhere is safe.
Yes, it's the constant singing. It's very...
That's this house.
Yeah, wow. Oh, that's what that was. Okay, that makes more sense. So, do you think the whole film will be remembered? You mentioned it's an iconic film, or does it have a lasting impact on musical theatre?
I don't know. That's the thing, because... I think musicals have very much moved on from West Side Story because there was the rise in the 80s of the mega musical where you get Cats, Les Mis, Phantom of the Opera, which are, very big musicals, lots and lots and lots of music, basically, lots of singing,
Yes.
And then in the 90s, musical theatre was having a bit of a financial crisis, so it needed the backing of really massive corporations for shows to get off the ground, which is why in the 90s you get the Broadway adaptation of The Lion King, the Broadway adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. I don't need to tell you who funded those.
Yes, of course.
And then in the 2000s you get the sort of resurgence of American musical comedies like The Producers, You're in Town. So I think musicals have definitely moved on from West Side Story. I think the only real impact that I can discern is the possibility of having a very sad, gritty musical, because maybe if West Side Story hadn't gone well, people wouldn't have bothered making more sad musicals. So maybe we wouldn't even have had Les Mis.
Oh, right.
Which is a horrible idea.
Okay, so we're saying that certain tropes and songs from West Side Story will indeed live on, but its legacy in musical theatre is undeniable.
Yeah,
so whenever you're sad watching a musical, then West Side Story lives on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's part of the wider musical theatre narrative, definitely.
Okay. Well, speaking of feeling sad, our next question is a question that we encounter to an unfortunate frequency in our daily lives, so we felt we had to put it on the podcast. It's one we have to keep asking ourselves. What's this got to do with Brexit?
Well, indeed, what has this got to do with Brexit? I mean, you could take the very obvious move here of things about immigration.
Perhaps. I mean, the film has the institution taking a very hard and negative view of immigration. The two authoritative figures, the policemen, are not keen on the Puerto Ricans being about. So there's that. You could link it to the rhetoric used by the campaigning around the referendum around immigration. Or you could take a wider point about division. The film follows both sides of a dispute.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it paints either of them in the wrong.
There's a very balanced view of a political debate.
Well,
which we don't see in the press these days.
Well, this is what I'm getting at. So, there's no good gang and there's no bad gang. There's no, the Jets are the good people and the Sharks are the bad people. It's just two gangs who are locked in a conflict, and I think the film shows them fairly evenly. It characterises characters on both sides, and you get a full fleshed account of both sides. And I don't know if this is more of a 2016-2017 thing than particularly a European referendum thing, but it does speak to how politics has become increasingly partisan. It moves to the extreme on either side.
Yeah.
And there's, well, you might say less understanding of, and more stereotyping and scapegoating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of people. Whereas in West Side Story, both sides of a conflict are fully humanised.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, maybe we could kind of learn from that. Because definitely with the EU referendum, there was a lot of, like, people were saying, oh, anyone voting Leave is racist, and people were saying anyone voting Remain is stupid and in the EU's pocket. Whereas, it was never as simple as that. Like, no one's views were as clear-cut as that. So maybe we could learn from West Side Story to kind of think about people's perspectives more. Actually,
in terms of learning, the main lesson we should have learned is that when we saw a big red bus, we should have thought danger.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's the real lesson here. That's the link to Brexit in this musical.
Something's coming. It's danger.
Yes. Next time you see anything big and red, just regard it with caution.
So, can I ever go to London again?
Well,
all those route masters,
Yes, exactly. Well, just be prepared with your dancing and your songs, and you should be fine.
Of course, I'll just snap at it.
Okay. So another question that we have is, if we were to see this in a different genre, if we could re-genre this piece, how would we do it?
Well, I have some notes.
Oh, right, okay.
Because I was thinking about this as, this is essentially a romance musical, and I was thinking in terms of the structure of a lot of musicals.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of musicals have a song where one half of the romantic couple will sing about the other half of the romantic couple. So you have Hopelessly Devoted to You in Grease, you have I Can Hear the Bells in Hairspray, you have Red and Black in Les Mis, sort of, you have I'm Not That Girl in Wicked, and you have Somewhere That's Green in Little Shop of Horrors, and you have Pulled in the Addams Family musical.
Okay, yep.
I'll stop there.
Yep.
And then most of these musicals, they'll only have one duet between the couple. So Grease has You're the One That I Want, Les Mis has A Heart Full of Love, Wicked has As Long as You're Mine, Addams Family has Crazier Than You, and Little Shop of Horrors has Suddenly Seymour. Whereas West Side Story obviously has Maria, which is the first, one half of the couple singing about the other half of the couple. But on the love song front, it has not one, not two, but three.
Oh.
It has Tonight,
Yep.
One Hand, One Heart, and Somewhere.
It's exhausting.
And I'm thinking, that's a bit excessive.
It's too much.
Because I can't think of any other musicals where they have more than two at a push songs sung by the same couple. So 3 is a lot, which makes me... This kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier about how obsessively romantic this musical is. So I think I would actually re-genre it as still a musical, but with the romance plot scaled back a lot, because I think the gang warfare plotline is a lot more interesting.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I was going to say. just reduce the romantic aspect, completely.
Like 3 love songs is excessive for a musical.
They don't even add, so each of the love songs concludes with a long drawn out kiss.
Yeah, and everyone, they always look like it's their first kiss.
Yeah.
It's like, you've done this before, calm down.
Exactly, they meet each other and kiss, immediately. And then each subsequent kiss is played as if it's this finally they're coming together and kissing. But it just isn't. They're clearly together.
Yeah, it's really annoying.
Paris, I would go on further, and I would literally cut the romance completely.
Okay.
In my re-genreing. I'm on the same page. I'd keep it as a musical. I'd keep it very similar. But I'd focus on the conflict between the gangs and the police. I think that's
that's really interesting.
That's way more interesting, because they do have a common enemy. There is that one thing that makes them get along, and that is the adults and the police. And you could look into that. Obviously the police are villainous because they are, they're treating minorities very poorly, but the gangs aren't without blame. They are criminals after all. Or they're causing trouble. So you could look into that dichotomy.
And I think musically as well, that would be a lot more interesting, because Tony and Maria only have one very brief dance number, which is, compared to the rest of the dance numbers, is kind of boring.
Yes.
Their songs are very boring.
The love songs are so boring.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the best songs in this film are, I would say, the Jet song, G Officer Krupke, Cool.
Oh, yes.
Maybe the Tonight Quintet. Basically,
and they're all exploding with energy.
And America.
Yeah.
Basically anything that involves the gangs, and they all have really great dance numbers.
Yes.
The gangs have really great dance numbers. They have really great songs.
Yeah.
Tony and Maria They're just really boring.
Yeah, they are. There's so any time the gang's on screen, it's like it is like explosion of energy. Like they're moving so fast and so quickly, and they're really going for it. And that's the real fun of this film, and that's why people remember the gangs and the snapping. You know, that's what's great about it.
That's the meat of it.
Yeah, and you just want to get that romance out of there. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're in agreement.
No to romance.
Yeah, literally, we re-genre it by just cutting the whole romantic Romeo and Juliet out of there.
Yeah.
That would make it a better piece.
So before we go on to our last question, just time to summarise. I have something I would like to say.
Please.
Is that the poster art for this film is often attributed to Saul Bass, but it was actually made by Joseph Karoff. Okay. So I would just like to restore some credit to the actual artist of this poster.
Okay, so we're using our platform as podcasters to unveil the truth to our listeners.
So all 5 of our listeners, now you know.
Yeah, next time anyone points to that West Side Story poster and says, "Oh man, Saul Bass did a really good design on that," you can be No.
Joseph Karoff.
Joseph Karoff did it. And I'll thank you to be correct about who you credit for artistic works.
Absolutely.
Okay, so bear that in mind, Joseph Karoff.
Yeah.
Anything else, Paris?
Well, here's a fun fact. The original casting choice for Tony, which they didn't manage to get, was actually Elvis.
Oh my gosh.
And they also tried to cast Audrey Hepburn as Maria, but she was pregnant at the time. So I just want you to envision how different this film would have been if it had been Elvis and Audrey Hepburn.
I mean,
that's really funny.
They're both talents, but that would have been awful.
Oh, it would have,
I mean,
it?
Audrey Hepburn is very much not Puerto Rican.
Well, neither is Natalie Wood.
Well, yes.
They had to put a load of makeup on her to make her look Puerto Rican. Also on the guy who plays Bernardo. But they put so much makeup on Maria and Bernardo to make them look Puerto Rican that they then had to put makeup on Anita, who is Puerto Rican, so she would match them.
Oh my gosh. We talked earlier about the film's use of colour in the palette, but they really went overboard, I think, on that one.
On that particular foundation palette.
Well, quite, yes, exactly. Elvis Presley and Audrey Hepburn.
It's
too much.
Can't envision that. It's very strange. So, question 12, as we finish up this podcast, give this a more honest title.
Shut up, Maria.
I mean, that's fair.
I mean, it's not just my reaction as an audience member. It's also, she's quite unreasonable, and well, I wouldn't. It's not her fault necessarily, but she is a factor in inciting tragedy.
Yeah.
And in fact, arguably the tragedy at the end of the film, where Tony is shot, he's walking around shouting out for the person who's going to shoot him, but he's only shot after Maria sees him and says, "Tony, I see you," and then he gets shot.
Oh, so Maria!
If Maria had shut up, then...
Then again, you say that, I don't really care when Tony dies.
No, okay, that's...
I'm just so done with the romance plot by that point.
She does actually do us a bit of a favour in that regard. Okay, so that's a contender. What else about this film could we summarise with a more honest title?
Well, I want to know, they Vaseline around Tony and Maria. Why don't they just Vaseline over Tony and Maria?
It's all coming out now. But is there anything else? So it's a clash of two cultures. It's set in New York in the 50s. Any other title components that we can glean from that, perhaps?
Well, we could parody the song title G Officer Krupke with G, too much romance.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good as well. Whatever our final title submission will be, it will probably be decrying the young love between Tony and Maria.
Yeah. Shakespeare rolls in his grave.
Yes, yeah, exactly. How about...
I feel shitty.
Okay.
I don't know why. Maybe because Tony can murder someone and just get away with it.
No, it's a good title because, as you said, this is one of the first musicals to end on a downer.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Also, it'll reflect, as we mentioned, that we're not a fan of Maria's character. I'm sorry, Paris. You've once again, you've done it again. You've hit it on the head. I Feel Shitty is the...
I'm so proud of me.
Is the more honest title for West Side Story. So I think that just about wraps it up.
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed our comments on this musical classic, and we hope very much to see you again next week, where we'll be applying our same incisive set of questions to a new item of media in some way. Until then, thanks very much for listening. I've been Jonny.
And I've been Paris.
Bye!
Bye!